If there's one thing that we absolutely 120% stupendously phantasmagorically excel at as a board gaming community, it's hyperbole. Take almost any game and it's already epic by default, even though some of them are self-admittedly tiny and obviously not at all epic, but you know, normal. However, when it comes to Gloomhaven, I can for once rest easy and feel not an ounce of doubt in my mind when I proclaim, this isn't just a game, this is a phenomenon. Originally published in 2017, it skyrocketed from obscurity to not only Board Game Geek's highest ranked game, a title it has held on to since, but universal acclaim and topped many reviewers' lists as their favorite game. Guess what? We're one of those reviewers. So what is Gloomhaven? What makes it so special? It's definitely not because it's a dungeon crawler. So many of those get made every year that I'm beginning to worry that there will soon be more dungeon crawlers than people. Gloomhaven is gargantuan in scope, offering nearly 100 unique scenarios and 16 playable characters. It's so big that by now it is my most played game, and I still haven't finished it. And some people would point to its scope as the source of its popularity, but I would say that bigger games have come and gone, and Gloomhaven still reigns supreme. Others might point to its legacy and evolving campaign aspects. You don't just pick a character for the entire game, you give them a personal quest. They complete it and retire, and you unlock a new secret character that was previously hiding behind a symbol. You sticker a map with new locations you unlocked, you upgrade cards that permanently change the character, not just for you, but for anyone else who plays your copy. You reside in a living, breathing world, and it reacts to you. So I wouldn't blame you if you thought, maybe that's the source of its success. But actually, I disagree. I think Gloomhaven is so ubiquitous because it's just a damn fine game. And it's about to get better. It's impossible for me to continue this video without addressing a little issue of bias that I have towards Gloomhaven. When we made our very first Gloomhaven video, we mentioned that the designer of the game, Isaac Childress, has been supportive towards our very first crowdfunding campaign. He has continued to be supportive throughout the years, and actually now I wouldn't hesitate calling Isaac my friend, which as a board game reviewer puts me in an awkward position, and at the risk of sounding a little bit pretentious, when I am facing a moral and ethical quandary as a reviewer, I look towards the greats in the other genres. So for example, when I look at Mark Kermode, I'm very well aware that not only is his favorite film The Exorcist, but also he's great friends with William Friedkin, the director, and has never shied away from reviewing his other films, because his biases are clearly worn on his sleeve. So let's consider this video not so much a review, because let's face it, I'm not trying to sell you on buying Gloomhaven, I'm just trying to tell you why I love it. And let's call it a love letter instead. First, whilst we're clearing up cobwebs, let's answer an important question. What exactly is Jaws of the Lion? Is it a sequel? Is it an expansion? Is it both? Is it neither? Well, the answer to that is that it's sort of a standalone, not sequel, that can be used an expansion to the original game or the sequel, so I think that clears it up for everyone. Here's the timeline. First, there was Gloomhaven. Then there was Founders of Gloomhaven, an unrelated game that shared the thematic universe and was also a bit rubbish. Then there was Forgotten Circles, an expansion to Gloomhaven, but the problem with that is that it required you to have finished the original Gloomhaven game, which I have on good authority no one has ever done, so no one's really played that and knows what it's like. Then there was Frosthaven, or should I say there will be Frosthaven, a standalone sequel that went on Kickstarter promising perhaps an even bigger game. Frosthaven hasn't even been released yet, but it's already become the highest grossing Kickstarter board game project ever, collecting $13 million, which is a number I would normally make up as a joke, but this is just real. And now there's Jaws of the Lion, a smaller, more compact, once again standalone game that can be integrated with either Gloomhaven or Frosthaven when it eventually does appear on your doorstep. So what's different? Well, first of all, scope. Instead of 16 characters, we only have 4. Instead of 95 scenarios, we only have 25, which might seem like a downgrade until you take into account that most dungeon crawlers have less than that to begin with. But it's not just volume that's different. It's also ethos. We're no longer on a multi-generational spanning romp. No characters will retire, no stickers on cards, nothing will be torn up. We'll simply go on another adventure, and to borrow some words from Bilbo, I am quite ready for it. Which all might seem like a downgrade, but what's important to recognize is that Gloomhaven has very different aims from its small baby brother. I say baby, but it's about more the size of a toddler really, isn't it? Gloomhaven is the end all and be all to those unintimidated that they'll spend $150 on cardboard that has the potential to figuratively and literally swallow them whole. Jaws of the Lion wants to break barriers instead. It wants to be a taste of that phenomenon for those yet unfamiliar, or for those who don't want to devote the next 2 years of their life to a single board game. This box requires devotion, whereas this one, you can just play. And I suspect that for many who just didn't have the willpower or the interest in Big Daddy G, this will be the balm that soothes them in. But first, let's have a look at what this game actually is. I was just about to say that Gloomhaven is simple. It isn't, but it's not complicated to explain either. Each scenario presents you with a location on a map, some monsters, a goal you're trying to complete, and whatever rewards you might get for doing that. Often these rewards will unlock new scenarios, which are stickers you'll get to glue on your map, unpeeling a layer of reality from an ethereal white cosmic sheet of locations and pasting it into your world. See, I told you. Hyperbole. Each turn, you will simultaneously with the other players select 2 cards and then reveal them to each other. Each card has a top action and a bottom action. Normally top actions relate to attacking and bottom actions relate to moving your bottom. But there's frequent exceptions. On your turn, you will select and perform either one of the 2 top actions or one of the 2 bottom actions. If you've selected a top action first, then on the other card you must select and perform a bottom action and vice versa, bottom action. For example, if Hatchet's player plays close cuts and center mass, they can get Hatchet to either move 3 spaces, push one of the enemies away into a trap, and then follow up with a double attack. Alternatively, they could attack the vermling next to them, move away, and then pepper that same vermling with a bow. Vermling kebab. Tastes a bit like chicken if chicken could viciously murder you. What you're not taking into account is that enemies fight back, and boy does it sometimes sting. Whilst you're selecting your 2 cards, you're looking at a static battlefield, making plans, creating connections between your abilities, but you have no idea when the enemies will activate and what they're going to do on their turn. Your 2 cards also determine initiative. They have a number in the middle, and you can choose which of those 2 cards will be your initiative value. And after you and your friends have revealed your 2 card choices, the enemies reveal their plans. In this case, the vermling stepped to the side to make a ranged attack against me, so my close cuts isn't going to cut it as a bottom action, and this crowd entirely dispersed, so it's not going to be very useful as a top action either. Like all good cooperative games, Gloomhaven makes you feel empowered by making your plans momentous. Not in a thematic way. I don't feel like I'm casting a, what is this, freeze the soul. I don't feel like I'm freezing a vermling's soul, but I do feel like I found just the right tool in a very convoluted bag of tricks. But then it side swindles you to make things unpredictable and exciting. The trick is to balance the variance where it doesn't feel frustrating, but also gives you enough tools for plans B, C, and D should plan A fail. And sure, sometimes you're stuck with plan Z, and that's not particularly exciting, but for each low, there is a high, a surprise of fortune. Each time you attack an enemy, you have to draw a card from your attack modifier deck. This could be as mundane as a 0, meaning the attack happens as it was, or maybe a nice little bonus, or maybe an outright miss, or hey, what up? Double damage. Is this deck just a die? Yes, but it's a die you can modify. As your character grows, so does their attack modifier deck, and you choose how to shape it with perks. Maybe you'll take out all the zeros. Great, now your deck is a seesaw. Maybe you'll add bonuses that also power up elements. Maybe you'll remove all the minus cards to make your deck as consistent as possible. This is really neat, not only because it gives you a new layer of ownership over your character, but also because it's just another different way of rewarding you. I think one of the things that sets Gloomhaven apart from other dungeon crawlers is the steady trickle of varied rewards. After each adventure, there's something around the corner, maybe a new item, a new perk, a level up, but it always feels fresh because it always feels a little different. This game never leaves you wanting, and that's true whether you're talking about Gloom Daddy-O or Jaws of the Lion. Speaking of which, it's time to tell you why this particular version is so special. I've lost count how many times people have told me, I played the first scenario of Gloomhaven, it was very dull, we died, and never playing it again. And honestly, I don't blame those people, because the first time I played Gloomhaven, wasn't so hot on it either. Not only is it harder than a dumbbell strapped to a tractor, but also it's about as exciting as a tractor. You got some archers, you've got some skeletons, go kill them, but honestly, they're probably gonna kill you first. The key mistake that the scenario design that original taste Gloomhaven makes is that it hides all the subtlety and then forces you to figure it out by making mistakes. And that's just not fun for a lot of people. Jaws of the Lion, on the other hand, does a complete 180. First, it strips out about 2/3 of the rules of the game, and then it just gives you a couple of vermlings to kill that could be taken out by a sloth with cataracts, and the whole thing is over in 15 minutes. Then, once scenario 2 comes along, you're being taught extra rules. It's a little harder and teaches you about pacing and card conservation. I haven't yet taught you the coolest rule in the game, and that's because I didn't need to. You don't lose the game when you run out of health. Technically, you lose the game when you run out of cards. I mean, you still lose the game when you run out of health, otherwise health would be pointless. Each time you get walloped, you can reduce your health or choose to lose a card. Why is that important? Well, each time you play cards, normally they go to your discard pile. When your hand is empty, you can take a rest and pick up all your cards back bar 1, which is lost forever. This cycle continues until you win or until you can no longer play 2 cards, and that's you out of the game. So then this rule of losing a card to negate damage is actually empowering you. Would you lose a card to prevent 4 damage if that means you would have less turns in the game? Maybe. What if it was 6 damage? So now imagine that you're playing Gloomhaven for the first time. You just read a 50-page manual and you're jumping straight into a punishing scenario that doesn't hold your hand and feels rather mundane. Will you even remember that rule about negating damage? Probably not. Whereas in Jaws of the Lion, all you have to do is read like 5 pages, then you get to have a bash, eat some vermling kebab, and then it'll teach you some subtlety. Again, scenario 3 comes along and teaches you more things. What about cards you can choose to lose? So instead of doing 3 damage, I could do 6 and potentially take out this vermling in 1 shot if I draw the right attack modifier. So what's the catch? If I play that card, it goes into my lost pile, and once again, I'm reducing the number of turns I'm going to get. If I do it on, say, my first turn, each subsequent rest I have less and less turns. The impact of losing a card early reverberates throughout the entire adventure. Being parachuted into Gloomhaven can feel as disorienting and dizzying as a long night in a barnyard disco. Providing a soft hay bed to land on is the kindest thing Jaws of the Lion can do. It's the most welcoming to new players, and I am here for it. And anyway, after scenario 5, it's still balls to the wall Gloomhaven, so don't worry about it. Why would you play this stripped down version when you could have a whole evolving world with branching storylines and potentially limitless replayability? Okay, that's fair, but I have played over 30 games of Gloomhaven now, and if you asked me what the story in that game was, I would say, I think my point is that sometimes less is more. By shedding this heavy coat of rhizomatic branching, suddenly we have a story that's a lot more focused and clear. From the get-go, I know who the villain is, I know what they're about, and I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. And yet, there's still enough mystery to make me feel like I'm plucking at the strings of a chicken that's bound to get upset and come back and bite me right in the plucker. Jaws of the Lion preserves the best storytelling element from Big G. City events, little narrative tidbits you read between adventures that ask you to make a choice without telling you what the outcome is. But now they are somehow better by being more mundane. That's right, and I think what sets them apart is verisimilitude. In a game where you're constantly hacking, slashing, blasting, and killing, what you don't want is more of the same in narrative side adventures. When I say mundane, I don't mean boring, these are anything but. They are light-hearted, humorous, deadpan, and sometimes even, I'm not hyperbolizing, laugh out loud funny. They show us a more regular side of our characters, and that makes them feel more relatable and real. Don't get me wrong, Jaws of the Lion still falls into the same trap of pedestrian fantasy that so many board games find themselves in. It's not revolutionary, it's not got anything to say, but when it does speak, it does so with style and aplomb. When I think of transformative board game narratives, I think of games like Legacy of Dragonhold or Comanauts. This isn't that, but it's a big step up from its predecessor, and for a hack and slash deterministic puzzle, it suits me just fine. Jaws of the Lion is obviously aimed at new players trying to discover this phenomenon for themselves, but that doesn't mean that the characters in these boxes are any less exciting. I imagine that character art is going to make people immediately reach for the Demolitionist. The answer to the question of what happens when fist meets wall. Turns out it's a quick trip to the hospital with broken bones, but not for you, for your enemies. Because the Demolitionist casually smashes boulders with his hands just to get himself amped up before hitting a Chaos Demon in the face. Or whatever a Chaos Demon has instead of a face. So now you're asking me, Efka, how can you top that? Well, let me introduce you to Hatchet. Not only is he a horned, hulking mass of muscles dressed like Humphrey Bogart, but he defines himself by his proficiency at throwing you a friendly axe. Okay, so he's a ranged damage dealer, right? Almost. He's a cool ranged damage dealer. Hatchet has a card called The Favorite as part of his kit. Once he plays it, he can, whilst throwing a hatchet, put a favorite token onto the enemy. Does that now make them best buds? No. That's not his favorite enemy. That's his favorite axe. Hatchet will deal an extra 3 damage as part of that attack. And then he has cards that deal extra damage to enemies that have his favorite lodged inside of them. Does that make this the Hunter's Quarry version of Gloomhaven? Well, imagine that you're racing down a corridor and you're being chased by zealots. With one good shot, Hatchet could probably take out one of the zealots, but here's the problem. They are behind you. You need to go forward, and if the zealot holding your favorite token dies, then it just drops it on the floor, and you are never getting it back unless you go and directly sit your hiney on it. This way you're given the tools to be very effective, but everything comes at a cost. Speaking of cost, how about a healer that actively hurts her allies? Yes, Say hello to the Void Warden. Of course there's a character drawing on the powers of a black hole to try and fix the situation. Why wouldn't there be? But yet again, the Void Warden is more an exercise in opportunity. Would you like a character that could heal a whopping 5 health and not even lose the card for the benefit? Fantastic, except it also poisons the target of your healing. But wait, there's yet another card that heals multiple allies, and if it just happens by chance to remove poison, it also gives them a bless, which is basically an extra critical hit shuffled into that player's attack modifier deck. We might not know much about black holes, but I think we all learned that if you lick them, good things might happen. And finally, there's the Red Guard, a defensive character that pulls in enemies with a sickle strapped to a chain. But you can find out more about the Red Guard yourself. I'll maintain some mystery. But above all, there's one improvement that makes me look at Frosthaven with slight trepidation and a wish that it was just a second box of this. Because if all of Gloomhaven versions had this scenario booklet, I could finally do this. Say hello to Gloomhaven that you could set up in 5 minutes. 3 minutes if your friends are helping you out. What wizardry is this, you might ask? The wizardry of pre-printed maps in a ring-bound book. Doesn't that make for very small maps, you might ask? Say hello to the wizardry of an additional ring-bound book. Magic. I've not really got much else to say here, apart from, hey, guess what? If you make Gloomhaven easier to set up, I'm gonna play it a lot more often. Who could have predicted that by making things easier, we're also making them better? And guess what? Because we don't have to build this map out of generic tiles, the art on it actually represents what's happening in the scenario thematically. My only wish is that this box was a little bit bigger. If you gave Gloomhaven a fair shake and still bounced right off, I doubt there's anything in this version to entice you back in. It's still the same game, just faster, leaner, and not meaner. But if you've never played Gloomhaven before and stared curiously through the restaurant window at the people gorging themselves on gourmet cardboard, then my friends, it's time to put your bib on, because this cardboard restaurant is finally open for everyone. And for me, I just have to figure out what it means that Gloomhaven is my favorite game of all time, and I like this one better. Hey look, I'm wearing a no pun included shirt. Where could you get this shirt? Well, there's a link down below, and if you hurry up, because there's like 6 days left, you could get one of these, and you should, because A, they're awesome, and B, once they're gone, they're gone. And you know what? If you, just putting it out there, if you happen to join our Patreon, you would even get a discount on the shirt. Wouldn't that be nice? You'd be supporting us, you'd be getting yourself a cheaper shirt. It would be the same price because you have to pay to join a Patreon, but you know, you're gonna be doing a good thing. And I think you should do that, because if you do that, we'll make more of these videos, and let's face it, that's what you want. Goodbye.